Now, speaking about leaders, sir. So you have spent nearly 15 years working for a top global IT service firm, that too in leadership roles. Sir, you did mention about the cost of attrition, right? So I'm curious to know, how do enterprises typically evaluate the cost of enterprises? Can you tell me some practical levers which you as a delivery lead with entrepreneurial mindset can use to retain some strong members? So I'd like to talk about like one sensitive topic in the industry, mainly with respect to layoffs. So speaking of AI, coming to the next section, which is the elephant in the room, retention in the era of AI. So now speaking about the hybrid era, so retention in hybrid era, I think this is something which COVID has created, which was not there in your first 25 years of journey. Hello everyone, I am Bala Vishnu Ranganathan, founder and CEO of Technotackle Software Solutions. This conversation is part of a larger initiative behind my upcoming book, The Retention Code, a founder's guide to building teams that stay. Right? So over the last 10 years of building Technotackle, one thing became increasingly clear to me. While a lot of companies invest huge amount of energy into scaling, delivery, expanding teams, driving growth, etc., there is one particular thing which they don't care much, which is like they don't really check if the underlying stability of the team on top of which they are building all this is proper or not. So they don't focus much on the retention part, right? So what happens is, as a result, teams evolve constantly, contexts get lost, and leaders find themselves building the same thing over and over again, right? So this realization made me rethink that attrition is not a people problem or a HR problem, but it is a deeper business problem that affects the continuity, efficiency of the business, and it will affect the long-term growth. Today, I'm glad to have Mr. Subramanian Venkataraman with us. He is shortly called Suru. So he has over 25 years of experience in IT industry with more than 15 years in senior delivery leadership roles, managing large global teams, client relationship, and delivering portfolio across multiple geographies. His experience spans across delivery, account management, pre-sales, and people leadership at scale. Mr. Subramanian, it's great to have you here, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Subramanian Venkataraman. I go by Suru. As Bala said, I have about 2.5 decades of experience in global delivery as well as in large scale account management. And my experience has been out and out in the IT industry. So we belong to the IT services industry, handling all these day-to-day challenges that have been actually that the industry has been facing for the last 2.5 decades. I've been actually all this through that. So, more probably as we progress, Bala.
Great, sir. Great. So, and folks, before we get started, a quick disclaimer. So, all the views shared in this podcast, the conversation we are going to have, everything is of his personal capacity and based on his experience of last 25 years and does not represent the official views of his employer, right? So that's it. Let's dive into the interview. Mr. Suru, one question I'm like really particular to ask you about today is like generally in IT industry, there is a notion that professionals believe that switching companies frequently is the fastest or quickest way to grow their salary and career. But as someone who has spent last 15 years in the same organization and you have also grown into leadership level, how do you approach this belief both from an employee's perspective and a leadership perspective, considering a long-term approach?
Okay, interesting question to start with. So, see, if the employee switches jobs frequently, that can actually give them growth and compensation. not as a result of the performance in the organization, but by leveraging the demand for a particular skill set at that point in time. So that is rarely sustainable in the long run. Employer actually thinks Rolling Stone gathers no mass, while employee may think Rolling Stone gathers more polish. So both are true to some extent. I would say if one stays in the same organization for long, then one has to grow into different roles or higher roles and take newer responsibilities. If one does the same role for an extended period of time, I think the value addition decreases over time and boredom is likely to set in, resulting in the lack of interest and loss in productivity. So it is the responsibility of the employee to continuously reinvent himself or herself, while the organization can only provide a conducive environment for growth.
Now, speaking about leaders, sir, so you have spent nearly 15 years working for a top global IT service firm, that too in leadership roles. What do you think are the key factors that make senior leaders stay with an organization for long term?
See, we should keep in mind that rank confers not only privilege, but it imposes responsibility. If the organization can give what the leader wants, then the leader actually stays. It can be growth, it can be international exposure, it can be stability, it can be freedom to decide, it can be cultural fit, it can be opportunities to choose from, and of course, compensation, which definitely also is an important part of it, no doubt about that. So, as time progresses in our career, we give more importance to all other factors beyond compensation as well. So, I think that sums up my um, answer with respect to what actually make leaders stay. Leaders continue to look for challenges. Leaders continue to look for opportunities to grow. Leaders continue to look for achieving something which probably has not actually happened so that they can actually take their career to the next level.
Got it, sir. So it is not only the monetary compensation; it does matter, but as people progresses in age, they also want more like stability, some opportunities, some ability to achieve few things which they have not done before, a growth pathway, challenges. So all this also matters. If an organization is able to provide with this, you mean that the leaders will stay for long, right? So based on your experience, sir, what are some of the top strategies these enterprises use to retain their senior leaders?
I think we covered this partly in the previous answer. As I said, organizations typically tend to give more freedom, of course, along with accountability for the results. And then, of course, leaders actually set the goals within the broad organizational framework, and then they encourage their teams to achieve their goals. And of course, yes, good job titles definitely are very attractive. Apart from attractive variable pay and good stock options, all the monetary part of it, I'm actually leaving them aside. Definitely, monetary part of it is important. But that said, we have the non-monetary part of it, which actually will have to be very attractive for a senior leader to get into an organization and continue to stay within the organization.
How much do you think that the monetary compensation matters and how much the non-monetary factors matter? If I can ask a number 50-50, or how much do you think matters?
You mean in terms of percentage? You
Yes,
didn't want
percentage. Yes, for a leader to say maybe like
depends
80%
on the
monetary.
it differs from individual to individual, I would say, because uh, each individual is different, and it depends on which stage of life their career at this point in its time is. So
Right.
obviously, there is limited time for everyone in their corporate world. But that said, there is a law of marginal utility which is likely to kick in over a period of time. Initially, people may tend to actually quickly switch jobs, and they value probably their CTC. But over a period of time, it is all a question of only the number that is going to actually go into their accounts. So I would say people would be interested in not just that; they would be interested in a lot of other activities, which are a lot of other personality traits, I would say. They would
Mm.
want to actually grow their business unit. They would want to actually grow their project or program. They would want to achieve bigger results. They would want to achieve. They would want to large. They would want to manage a larger team, I would say. So it depends on the individual. Depends on the expectation of the organization as well. So if both the individual as well as the organization's expectation align, I think that they would actually make a good team.
Got it, sir. So
So
thank you.
monetary part of it, the monetary compensation is something which will differ from organization to organization. It will even within an organization, it may differ from individual to individual.
Right.
So I don't think there is a specific answer to that, Bala.
Generally, for at least the junior mid-level folks, when I ask why do you leave the current organization, one answer I get is work-life balance. There is no work-life balance is a common answer. Till now, I noticed that you haven't mentioned that. So does it mean that when you go up with the ladder, since you are the one who is managing, that doesn't become a problem, or you get used to it? How does it work?
See, if we grow over the ranks, we probably will not complain much about the
Hmm.
work-life balance, and that is because we know the way the IT services industry works,
Hmm.
and if we actually take proper steps to retain our teams and train our teams and build a second level leadership or third level leadership, then I think work life balance separately should not be an issue.
Hmm. So now shifting gears, when we talk about the impact of attrition in global delivery. So my first question is, sir. So looking back at your experience, was there a moment where, in the critical moment, a resource left, and because of that there was a huge pressure in the project, or there was a situation where a client was going to drop because a key person was about to leave or has left? Was there any such instances? Without mentioning any names, you can let me know.
See, we cannot avoid attrition in the IT services industry, and I realized this very early in my career. We have a notice period, probably typically in organizations which may go from 2 months or 3 months, and during which the employee is actually expected to make a successful transition into the next knowledge transfer recipient. So
Hmm.
we do anticipate such movements and plan for cross killing of critical roles, though these actually may reduce the impact to the customer. So ours is more process dependent. In the any mature organization will have to be more process dependent than people dependent.
Hmm. Got it. So it is, attrition is unavoidable. Really depends on the process, since there is notice period, etc. How do you manage it, right?
That is right. That is right. Because you know that the cost of attrition also comes particularly when you peg the head count to the contract. For
Hmm.
example, if it is going to be time and material, we would say probably an attrition probably may actually have an impact. But
Hmm.
if it is some other kind of a contract, it can be probably a fixed bid, it can be probably a managed services model, where the resource count or the FTE count, as we normally call, that is probably not attached to that. Where rather it is only the milestone, rather it is only the outcome that is probably going to determine the revenue or the impact to the customer. So I would only say in such cases, one is to actually expected to have a strong contingency plan, and probably we need to actually also have a budget for that contingency. So I would say one needs to plan for addition during normal times. I don't want to give a number. It can be maybe 5%, 10%, 12%, whatever it is. And however, there may probably may be some extraordinary circumstances where it probably can even surge past a fixed percentage, like maybe 15%, 20%, maybe like that. So in such cases, it may probably have some impact on our delivery organization. But I have seen several strategies which actually be adopted by organizations. It can be probably through some I'm not talking something very confidential. This is something like more like a retention bonus. Can be a fast growth path for the teams. Maybe matching the compensation given by some other employer, competing employer, or it can be any other strategy which probably can be designed based on the situation.
Sir, you did mention about the cost of attrition, right? So I'm curious to know, how do enterprises typically evaluate the cost of enterprises? Does it come in delivery performance report, client satisfaction report, or is it part of the operational cost? How do they measure it, or do they measure it?
See, it differs. It differs. Some organization probably may have a way by which they can actually measure that. Some organizations probably may not have that level of detail. But it is all dependent on the. When I say cost of addition, we just mean that the cost that probably is incurred because of training. You have to hire an employee. You have to then train the employee on board, bring that person up to speed, right? So I would only say cost of attrition. There is no specific method to compute the economic cost in an organization. There are several models. Different organizations may compute it differently. But there is no one proven method which probably can be recommended. But I would only say it is better if we actually look at the cost of the employee to the organization and the return that probably the employee probably can give. It is very difficult to quantify unless and until the employee is billable employee. If the person is in a billable role, it is a lot more easier to compute that. Probably it may not be that easy if the person is not in a billable role. Then probably you have to look only at the person's cost to the company, and then look at the return that the organization is getting out of that investment. So different. It depends on the cost and accounting models that the employer actually follows.
Say, suppose if it is a time and material project where the resource is directly reporting to the client, and he knows more about the client project, the code base, etc. Say a critical client facing resource is leaving, and client is not happy that he is leaving, but somehow the organization is not able to retain him. So in those moments, how do you keep the client confidence without going to the rock bottom? Are there any strategies you use to, we do this to hold the client? Just because a resource leaves, we don't want the client to leave, right?
That's a good question. First, one has to actually try to retain the employee as much as possible, but that may or may not work always. So
Correct.
usually, for critical roles or critical employees, these roles are actually identified, and some cross-skilling, actually, some planning actually happens in a proactive manner. It will not actually happen in a reactive manner. It will happen in a proactive manner. And so if that is the case, and one very important thing is we actually maintain absolute transparency in the industry with all the customers. Maintaining transparency with customers on such critical areas is always very helpful, so that the customer is already aware of the challenges. So I would say, as I said earlier, the attrition is something which probably may be there for the bottom of the pyramid, but at the same time may also impact some critical roles. That is also possible. So it depends on the senior leadership within the project or the program to identify such kind of critical roles, and look for the backups well in advance, plan for the backups well in advance, do some cross training, do some cross skilling. All those things need to actually happen proactively rather than react after that incident has already happened.
Mr. Suru, I'm curious, like, say, I'm sure you would have led big projects that scaled across countries and the teams in multiple locations, etc. For such big projects like that involves hundreds or thousands of people, how important or not important a critical resource living is? How do generally companies manage it?
See, I'm not referring to hundreds of thousands of people,
Mm.
because that is a much larger number than what probably I have handled.
Okay.
So, but I think I answered this question partly earlier, identifying the critical team members, cross-killing them, as I said previously, maintaining a healthy buffer pool of
Right.
trained resources, then doing some business continuity planning, mandatory notice period of maybe 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is.
Mm.
All these things probably would ensure that the delivery commitments are met, irrespective of the locations of the team members. Sometimes the team members can be co-located, as you talked about pair programming.
Mm.
Sometimes team members may not be co-located in global organizations. Team members, they not necessarily they are co-located. Even within the same city, they may be working in different offices. So I would say these delivery commitments, if you have to meet all these delivery commitments, they will have to be irrespective of the location of the team members. But I would also add that if it is a niche skill,
Mm.
then we probably have to plan to reduce the dependency on that particular resource, but through probably train the trainer program, through probably other kinds of activities, though at times unplanned attrition may still have some impact. So it depends on the skill set. Even if it is going to be a rare skill set, we know pretty well from day one that that skill is a very niche skill or a rare skill, and that is something which probably we will have to plan for. So I would say, irrespective of the size of the team, it is the criticality of the role. I'm not talking about a specific team member. I'm talking about the criticality of a role, which probably may impact the customer, and we will have to foresee that in advance, and we will have to plan for that in advance. As I said, either you can do a train the trainer program, or
Mm.
probably you can hire alternate resources, maintain a healthy buffer pool. Probably you can plan for your business continuity. You probably will obviously have the support from the HR through a mandatory notice period. All those things probably come in handy in doing that.
Next, moving on to the next section. So one thing I wanted to know is, see, when I interview small and medium company founders, there they have a vast or majority of control over the company policies. Say today they know about a new technique, they can feel free to implement it. But in larger organization setups, you don't have the liberty to go and change the entire organization's policy. You have limited control of what you yourself can tweak, right? So in this limited control environment, what all you can do to ensure that your team has more retention rate without having to change the company wide policies?
Great question. So nowadays, for companies to survive, companies have to be very nimble
Mm.
in adapting to changes. Large organizations have dedicated business unit lead HR leaders to handle these and take them to the central HR leadership whenever required. But yes, one has to actually operate within the broad organizational framework in a large organization, and cannot significantly deviate from the established norms. I agree with that. For example, we can make promotion promises, but they can happen only during the established cycles,
Mm.
which are probably centrally decided.
Mm.
That way, I would say smaller organizations or probably the startups they may have an edge. But working in large enterprises, they have their own unique advantages, I would say.
Makes sense. So even though there are few edges here, so there are their own unique advantages which they leverage and they do right on
More
this.
opportunities, I would say. In a
Okay.
larger organization, the opportunities are plenty.
Okay. Okay. So
Opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow.
so can you tell me some practical levers which you as a delivery lead with entrepreneurial mindset can use to retain some strong members? If you can mention some levers which typically delivery leaders use,
You are referring to
like say for
levers to
example,
retain.
yes, say for example, some you feel that your critical resources about to leave on this. What things you can do within your power to retain him without having to alter the company policy? As you said, promotions we cannot do immediately, there is a cycle for it, but what all is still accessible by you, which in your capacity you can do that so that you can retain the resources.
See, different people have different aspirations, different
Mm,
hot buttons. Somebody probably may be interested in a job title. Somebody
mm,
may be interested in better compensation. Somebody may be better interested in a promotion. Somebody may be interested in an on-site opportunity. So
mm,
it differs from individual to individual. It depends also on the leaders and
mm,
the culture that the leader actually sets within the teams.
mm.
So, but I would only say mainly there are certain benefits which one can actually bring to the table. For example, I would say freedom. The freedom actually to decide on, for example, work models. The
Mm,
number of days when one can probably can attend the office. That
mm,
may vary from team to team depending
mm,
on the client requirement or the role requirement, right? So, if a leader can actually help in deciding that, then probably may be a big factor for somebody
mm.
who may probably be coming from a distant location.
Right.
Everyday travel of 2 hours or 3 hours probably may be very challenging to that individual, right? So that probably may actually be a bigger influencing factor in retaining the person's ability to perform. So also I would say what I normally do try and do is try to do the cross leadership team connects. I normally do that
Okay.
where we actually share such best practices. What exactly the employee wants and what exactly are the best practices that are being followed across all our teams. And of course, rewarding activities like, for example, if somebody can actually pitch in and help with an innovative solution, or they can actually pitch in and help for some requirement in a particular team, probably that is something which probably will play a bigger role. In my view, an employee actually leaves not because of compensation per se. Compensation definitely matters, but there are a lot of other factors which the employee actually is interested in. And one such thing that I told you is about, for example, the flexible work model.
Mm,
But again, that is not purely dependent on the leader.
mm.
That is also dependent on the role. That is dependent on the customer's requirements. So yeah. But what normally leaders in organizations such as ours we try and do is try and align this to the individual's expectations. So without compromising on the customers' commitments.
So
Yeah.
now speaking about the hybrid era, so the retention in hybrid era, I think this is something which COVID has created, which was not there in your first 25 years of journey. So how do you think hybrid era has affected retention and team stability? Is it in a good way or a bad way? What is your thoughts on the hybrid work?
See, I would say even earlier to pandemic days,
Mm,
our the employees actually at onshore locations. When I say our employees in the IT industry, I'm saying
okay.
they are at onshore locations. They had the freedom to work remotely.
Okay.
So real estate costs at onshore was one of the driving factors.
Mm,
So either we used to work out of client locations, or we used to work out of our own premises.
Mm.
So, since real estate space was limited at onshore, employees always had the freedom to work remotely whenever it was required.
Mm.
However, that was actually not the case at offshore at that time.
Mm.
But with pandemic, all that changed, not by choice but by chance.
Mm.
Business was not actually disrupted. Business was not to be disrupted, but we had a lot of other advantages, right? We had electricity, we had internet, we had the administrative expenses. Many of these things actually were well managed during that time for the organization. But most importantly, employees actually, I saw that they were actually getting used to remote way of working, as they felt that that gave them the freedom to balance their personal life as to their professional commitments. On the other hand, organizations had already invested in real estate space and brand building in different locations. So, in my view, I would say pure virtual collaboration, it may have its advantages for the employees, but they deprive them of the real team building and the camaraderie that it actually brings in. So organizations have implemented the hybrid work model. I would say to ensure that this kind of a camaraderie continues to be built, and we have the better communication and control over all our deliverables.
Got it, sir. Got it. I think that's beautifully said. So even before it was there, but not mainstream. COVID just made it mainstream by chance, right?
At offshore.
So now shifting gears. So I'd like to talk about like one sensitive topic in the industry, like mainly with respect to layoffs. Right? So over the last few years, at least last 3-4 years, we have been hearing a lot of stories with respect to layoffs. Even very senior leaders are getting laid off, etc. I understand from an organization point of view, they have to show quarterly profits, and one quickest way to show this is like cutting the headcounts, etc. So, from a delivery leader perspective, do you think these layoffs are unavoidable business decisions, or the companies can use some strategies to avoid reaching that stage of criticality? What is your personal opinion on this?
See, I feel that it depends on few factors.
Mm.
This depends on the size of the organization and the resilience of the organization to such turbulences. If the business environment is an ever-changing business environment, and it also depends on the leadership decisions. So, while I am not in favor of such large-scale layoffs, I would only say probably the impact may be on slowdown of our recruitment, or about a slowdown in our intake process.
Got it.
So instead of actually letting people go, probably one way is to actually see if the intake can be slowed down. That is one strategy which goes well with me at an individual. As an individual, I support that kind of an arrangement. But then again, sometimes there may be scenarios where these kind of unfavorable, or rather, I would say, difficult, tough decisions are taken by organizations, which probably one cannot avoid. I've seen that in the past. This has nothing to do with the pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. I've seen this in the past several decades. I've actually seen this happen.
See, when these kind of layoffs happen, it obviously impacts the people who were laid off. But for people who are still in the organization and were not part of the layoff list, I'm sure it would still have some psychological effects, like they will also start thinking about their stability, and they will also start thinking that they may be part of the next layoff, etc. So in such a scenario, as a leader, how do you ensure that you stabilize the team and reassure their confidence?
No, that's a great question. Um, I agree that this kind of a scenario may give some sense of insecurity to the people who actually choose to stay back. I agree. However, it is the responsibility of the leaders to effectively communicate the reasons why such tough decisions had to be made. And the transparent communication actually helps in allaying the fears and stopping rumors. So I would only say these kind of things. We hope they don't happen often. They don't happen often. I mean, but at the same time, whenever they happen, we should actually ensure that there is 100% transparent communication, and it is the leader's responsibility to allay the fears of the people who are actually staying with the organization, so that it can actually put an end to all kinds of unnecessary rumors.
Right. So transparent communication is the key, right? So
Absolutely, transparent communication is always the key.
it's the key, and that helps kill the rumors and reassures the fear that
That's
the trust still maintains, right? So sometimes, as a delivery leader, you yourself may not be aware when the next layoff may happen, or are there more layoffs, etc. In that case, how would you handle the next scenario? If you are sure that there is no more layoffs, if you have got the news from your leadership, that's good. But sometimes you yourself may not be sure, right? So in that case, just curious, how would you handle it?
No, we cannot do anything. I mean,
Right.
those kind of things had actually happened maybe, I would say 15, 20 years as well. So, in such organizations, when we do not know the decision, when we do not know the details of such decisions, those things come as a surprise or a shock, even to the leaders, correct? So, in that case, we can do very little to allay the fears, because we do not know that such things actually are in the pipeline. So,
Right.
obviously, I would only say we will have to be honest and transparent about it. But because you told about large organizations also, I would want to always say that in established organizations, the decisions are all not done in an ad hoc manner. Probably that may happen in slightly smaller organizations or startups, but in larger organizations, mainly the decisions are data driven. Okay, so today organizations actually use a variety of, I would say, HR tech tools are available. So these HR tech tools actually leverage AI, and they actually perform a lot of things. Not only about the layoffs, but also about the voluntary attrition, I would say, where probably they may actually do techniques like sentiment analysis or predictive analytics. Those tools actually can actually help in calculating the likelihood of all the employees who probably may actually start leaving when such kind of insecurity actually exists.
So speaking of AI, coming to the next section, which is the elephant in the room, retention in the era of AI. And this, so no conversation nowadays will be fulfilled without
Okay,
speaking about AI.
agree.
Right. Awesome. So my first question in this is, with the rapid rise of AI agents, autonomous agents, some leaders argue that AI agents offer something which no human can ever do, which is 100% retention, right? The retention rate of AI agents are 100%, which no human can ever do on this. So from your perspective, do you think retention will be more important or less important in the AI era?
See, my view is that AI cannot replace humans completely.
Okay.
Human in the loop is always required. The
Okay.
human actually in the loop, the human intervention probably may be required even during the deployment of AI agents.
Hmm.
So, but AI can actually reduce the burden of employees by doing repetitive tasks,
Hmm.
and some related decisions also can be done without human intervention. But that said, all this is actually focused on because employees can actually then continue to focus on more value added tasks,
Hmm.
tasks which can actually add a higher value rather than continuously doing repetitive tasks. So that can actually be replaced by an AI agent, or probably can be done through an automation, right? So skilled employee retention, if that is your question, can it will continue to be very important in my view. But
Okay.
we should note that the employees who adapt to changes, who can unlearn and relearn fast, they are the most who are sought after.
So, so one last question before we wind up the interview, sir. This, so I know many SME founders struggle to retain their mid-level managers, right? Someone between like 7 to 15 years experience. This category people, many SME founders find it difficult to retain, right? So, based on your experience working in many large organizations, what practices can these smaller companies adapt to retain their best leaders longer? What do you?
Are you referring to retention in general, or are you referring to leadership retention in particular?
Yeah, leadership retention in particular,
See, large organizations can actually give stability
right?
and a structured career growth path,
Hmm.
while smaller organizations, they can give rapid career progression to middle management and to senior leadership roles.
Hmm.
And sometimes that can probably even transcend geographies.
Hmm.
Depends on the onshore opportunities that are available in that organization at that particular point in time. So I would say uh, these things actually make so the survival of the smaller organizations a bit challenging. And so, however, smaller organizations can actually give very fast career growth when compared to larger organizations. So I will not directly take a clue from there. I would only say we need not have a long hierarchy in a small organization between the entry level and the executive leadership. We probably are the promoter. So we probably, if it is a smaller organization, it can be a very lean organizational hierarchy. The career progression probably can be very, very fast, maybe year after year on year, or maybe once in 2 years. And that actually also is coupled to wealth sharing, I would say. You
Hmm.
know, many companies which are large companies today, they were all once a startup only,
Hmm.
and they have actually grown due to their liberal wealth sharing policies at that point in time.
Hmm.
But today, such kind of liberal wealth sharing policies, are they possible? Today, do we have that kind of growth opportunity still available? Well, that is a different question.
Hmm.
But I would say these are some of the things that I could think of. You know, in smaller organizations, if they have to take a clue, I would only say very lean organizational hierarchy, better recognition for the limited number of employees who are actually in the organization, better wealth sharing, because many smaller organizations may not actually do those liberal wealth sharing policies. So employees probably their salaries probably may be high,
Hmm.
but probably they may not actually be given the stock options or things like
Hmm.
that.
Got it. Got it. I think.
So, but if organizations want to retain talent,
Hmm.
and they will have to think that all the large organizations in the world, they
Hmm.
were all once garage startups,
Hmm.
and
Right.
so they have done something correct,
Right.
and that is the reason probably they have grown to what they are today.
Right.
And so probably these are things which probably smaller organizations can actually do as well.
Got it, sir. Got it. I think those are some very valuable insights. So I think we are done with the interview. Thank you very much, sir.